Hi, my name's Narad, and I'm a PhD candidate at the City Intelligence Lab at the Austrian Institute of Technology. Today, and within this video, we're going to be giving a demo on how to use InFraReD, the Intelligent Framework for Resilient Design. We're going to cover the basic functions, how to create and manipulate geometry, how to set up a site to perform analyses, and then of course, how to run the analyses. There's a lot of other bells and whistles attached, but I'd like to leave that up to you to experiment with. So to start off, you would need to go to infrared.city and then punch in your credentials. After logging in, you're greeted with two options to either create a project or load one. Let's create a new one. Let's just throw it down anywhere. I choose Sydney. Name your project accordingly, and you can determine its size, its area, by spacing along x-axes and y-axes. Analysis grid resolution is set to default by 10, and this determines the resolution of analyses, but we'll leave that for now. After clicking continue, our servers will reach out to OSM and collate all the CT data and bring it back to our servers, convert it to our representation of geometry, and then store it in our database. Here we go. This here is the project. You can use right click to orbit around the project and shift right click to pan. Scrolling allows you to zoom in and out. And because this was made with Unity, and here at the CIL, we kind of care a lot about the shot, you can also use the combination of orbiting with the right click and WASD, to convert that orbiting to a look. So then you can kind of fly around. Now I'm a bit lost. Okay. So that's camera movement. You'll see a few bits and pieces on the UI. So on the left-hand side, you'll have this drawer, which is openable using this top left button. And within this drawer, you can add analyses. We'll come back to that in a moment. Let's close it for now. Down the bottom, you'll see three different what we call modes. InFraReD, well, at least the web app, is a modal system, and context is the mode in which you can manipulate the context geometry, pre-existing geometries. Design mode is where you can import and build and draw your own designs. And finally, explore. Explore is a way to see the performance of your design and design variants through its own unique interface. Finally, on the right-hand side, you have a few tools which do change based on what mode you're in. So let's start exploring those. On the top right, this InFraReD logo is actually a clickable button, and clicking that takes you back to this create and load project menu. We're going to load that project again because we have already created it. This here shows as a graph view, and you can see a previous project that I've made, Vienna. But let's go into Sydney, the one we just created, and into the origin snapshot. Again, we'll get into snapshots in a moment. Here we have account information, my email, as well as the name of this account, and a button to send feedback. Clicking this button will take you to a Microsoft Forms, and filling that out is greatly appreciated if you ever do encounter any bugs. You have a few camera settings, for example, top view to see it in not perspective. I think it's orthographic view. I'm not sure. And similarly, you can hold shift and right click to pan around. The moment you release shift and then just right click, you're back to orbit and thus back to perspective. And then if you ever get lost like I did last time, there is a reset camera button. Now there's the import project button, and as it stands, it is currently not working. InFraReD is under active development, and new features are implemented as every day. As it stands right now, import project is not working, and for the features that follow suit that are here but not yet working, I will be sure to mention it in this video. However, that said, if you are watching this video a little bit down the line, um, hopefully I've updated this video by then, but try it out, as by that point, maybe it has been implemented. Okie dokes. We're going to skip set start for now. We're going to look at the info. The info is an info pane associated with the objects within the project. So for example, if I were to click on this, say, building and then click on info, it would let me know that it is a residential building of 112 meters. Now, of course, that isn't the case. In Sydney CBD, this here is definitely not a residential building, and that is a byproduct of a limited data. So taking the data from OSM, if that data isn't there, we default its use to residential. As it stands, building use has no impact on any of the analysis. However, it will when we start adding more analyses to do with mobility. And so that menu is how you would say change it. Data layers is to do with what data objects are visible in the scene. We have buildings and street segments, and we can toggle off, say, street segments if they're irrelevant for now. So in context mode, we are looking at context building. Everything that's considered right here is known as a context building. So if I were to example say that right in the middle of Sydney CBD, I'm gonna clear out this block of buildings here, these two blocks, and set my site. Well, there are two ways to go about it. The first is to select the buildings and then click delete, which would send a request to our backend deleting that building. You can do so with multiple buildings at a time, clicking delete there, and it deletes both. Or, since you know where your site is, you can set your site using left click here. And to close your site, simply click on the starting point of this set site function. And after designating your site, you can click delete site buildings to clear everything within that site. Now, before we switch to design mode and start adding buildings into the site, let's talk about analyses. So because of the way the backend of InFraReD works, and how the exploration mode works, where you can explore design variants, we standardize analyses across a project. Meaning, when you set up an analysis here, you're setting it up for not just this design, but for every other design you might want to change to, or build upon, or iterate through. This way, when you're in explore mode and when you are comparing between these design variants, you have something standard to compare against. It doesn't make sense to change your analyses and compare those, which is why it's so early in the process, which is why it's in the context mode. So let's set up some analyses across the entire project now. Opening up this drawer, we can click Add Analyses, and we can choose what we find useful. Let's throw in a look at wind comfort. Let's assume that it's coming from the east, from the sea in Sydney. And let's say, let's provide two scenarios. A day, a period in time where the wind speed is rather low at 3.5. And let's do another one, again in wind direction 90, where it's got really rather fast wind speeds. Let's also, apologies. Let's also look at wind speeds, so the raw wind factors for when It's in the more dangerous scenario, the 15.5 degrees wind speed. We'll throw that here. And yeah, let's say we're happy with this. Let's say we're happy with all of the context buildings that you'd like to remove, the site boundaries, as well as the analyses that are project-wide. It's now time to switch on to the next mode, and that is the design mode. So within the design mode, on the right-hand side, you might have seen a few of the tools shift, as well as the context building becoming faded. In the design mode, you don't actually have the ability to manipulate or inspect any of the context buildings. And the reason is, well, you're now playing with design buildings. On the right-hand side, down the bottom, we have create building. Doing so creates a building within the design mode. You can draw a building by starting with its footprint. And then once closing that footprint, without clicking, moving your mouse up and down to select its height. Now you might have noticed that upon clicking on the building, you can see some manipulation tools, a gumball. You can move this building and manipulate it as you would in any other CAD software. If you want more detailed and more powerful forms of manipulation, you can look within this chunk of tools to manipulate the building further. I'm just going to add a few more buildings, and then we can run some analyses. As you might tell, I'm no architect. Okay, this is my plot. And yeah, let's see how it performs. So we've set up our analyses in the context mode. We're now in the design mode, which is where you can also run and visualize your analyses. So we'll talk about what snapshots are in a mo. The analyze button is really all you need to click. You've already designated and added the arguments for what analysis you'd want to run. All you need to do now is to run it. Clicking analyze sends a request to the server and then pulls down all the analyses. And we have the three that we've set up. So let's start with wind comfort. Clicking it will give you a little view into some metrics and some key performance indicators. You can select parts of this graph to see how much of the area falls within that range. The colors behind each bar in the graph represents its comfort, whether it's considered dangerous or if it's okay for pedestrians to sit there for a long time or sit there for a short time, so on and so forth. And yeah, I mean, let's have a look at the top view. You can see here, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor actually, you can see near the top right of the screen, a very densely packed set of buildings with alleyways where the wind has tunneled through and thus caused a lot of high wind speeds at the intersection here, similar to in this bottom left section. So let's have this. So this is the situation in the more dangerous wind speeds. Let's see how it performs in wind comfort. And this here is categorizing it into those classes we talked about before: sitting long, sitting short, dangerous, uncomfortable, so on and so forth. Yep, wind coming from the east at 15 meters a second. Let's look at how it performs at 3.5 meters a second. And you can see that it is totally comfortable throughout. You can sit there for a rather long time, but that is at 3.5 meters a second. Okie dokes. So let's start talking about snapshots. So snapshots are how it's our word for design variants. Let's say you're satisfied with this rather crude design variant and you want to keep it, you want to hang on to it, you want to maybe compare the results of these with another design variant later on. Well, the way you would do so is by clicking Branch Snapshot. Clicking it, the app asks you, are you sure? Do you want to create a new instance from this snapshot? Click OK. And right now you're defining the new snapshot. So let's call it design variant 1. More buildings. And so clicking save, what happens is that snapshot we were just on, yes, that was a snapshot, is saved and put to the side. By default, the first snapshot is called origin. What happens next is it takes a copy of that and creates another snapshot. And that other snapshot is then called, as you've called it, design variant 1. Now, any sort of manipulation you perform in the design mode in this snapshot stays within the snapshot, meaning you can go back to the other snapshot if you want to, and then everything would be unchanged. Everything will be as it was. So let's give a demo of that. Let's create some new buildings. We're in design mode. Let's add more buildings, as the description has said. Sure, that's good enough. And as a note, because each interaction is sent to the server upon interacting, all of this is saved. You can leave the website right now, and you can rest assured that this snapshot will contain those latter 2 buildings that were just added. So let's see how it performs now. You can click Analyze. You'll see that on the top left, it says which snapshot that you're in, design variant 1. And now you can see the results coming back, including the new buildings. Now let's see what happens if I were to change this. You'll see that underneath the building, of course, it's blank because there's no wind passing through it. The analyses modules don't consider it, so they just leave it blank. But yeah, so after moving this, after manipulating with a snapshot, let's just say you're not happy with the position of the building, or you want to manipulate it more, or add further buildings, and then you want to see how it performs now. Well, you can just simply click Analyze again. It removes the old analyses and starts the request to compute the analyses on these new sets of geometry. And you can see that it's updated accordingly. Okie dokes. I think that covers the main basic functions of InFraReD. I'm going to give you a sneak peek of the Explore mode. This is still in development, as with everything else there is. But the Explore mode is a way to compare the design variants. As it stands, we only have 2 design variants, the origin and then the design variant 1. So there's not much to see between the 2. But as your project grows and as you add more and more snapshots, you'll see that this Explore tool can become incredibly handy. Here's a sneak peek, and I do implore that you dig into it yourself. My name has been Narad. This is the City Intelligence Lab's work for InFraReD, the Intelligent Framework for Resilient Design. Thank you.